Welcome to the very first episode of Lab Rat Chat. This podcast is sponsored by the Americans for Medical Progress through the Michael D. Hare Fellowship, which is awarded to someone each year to support projects like this that are developed to educate the public on the importance of animal research. This fellowship is in honor of the late Dr. Michael Hare, a renowned board-certified laboratory animal veterinarian who dedicated his career to scientific and medical advancements, and who was committed to animal welfare and advocacy. So what's this podcast all about? Well, regardless of what you may hear in the media or online, we are nowhere close to replacing the use of animals in research, and we must continue using them in very humane and ethical ways. On this very first episode of Lab Rat Chat, my amazing co-host Danielle and I will introduce you to the world of laboratory animal research and provide you with an alternate narrative to what you're used to hearing. The field is very, very tightly regulated. The animals are extremely well taken care of, better than most people's pets, in fact, and why we must continue using them in order to make medical advancements. We'll also be announcing some very exciting giveaways on the show that you'll definitely want to hear about. I know you're thinking, wait a second, I thought these animals were just taken off the street and used in research, put in some dark, damp, drafty basement. Well, sit back, get ready, and listen to what really goes on in this field from people who are involved on a daily basis. Enjoy the very first episode of Lab Rat Chat. This is the very first episode of Lab Rat Chat. I'm Jeff here with my co-host, Danielle.
Hey, everybody.
And this podcast is all about just letting you all know, letting the public know that there's another side to the story, which you may have heard surrounding the world of animal research. And so we're here to provide you with some facts and that alternate narrative to describe and tell you that animal research is indeed 100% necessary, at least for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, and we want to debunk some myths. Everything is not as some of the media would like to portray it. We want to interact with you guys. We have a Twitter handle, which is @TheLabRatChat. We also have an email address. What's the email address, Jeff?
It's labratchat@gmail.com.
Perfect. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, once you kind of hopefully stick with us and listen to this podcast, email us, hit us up on Twitter. And I think there was also some exciting Amazon gift card giveaways.
Yes, there are 5 $100 Amazon gift cards that we're going to be giving away to the listeners of this show, as long as you are interactive with the show. So you go online and leave some comments, leave some feedback. It could be negative, it could be positive. It doesn't really matter. We're going to address the comments if they're negative or even if they're positive. If you have questions, if you have concerns, if you want us to interview a particular person that's in this field, we'll be happy to do that. We'll reach out to them. Yeah. We want as much feedback from you all as we can possibly get to be able to answer any questions or concerns that you might have about this field. Because I know whenever I ask my own family members, cousins, nephews, nieces, what their thoughts are on animal research, it's either what is animal research or it's negative or it's cruel and inhumane. And then it takes some time to go into some education.
Yep. So let's get into it. We just want to introduce everybody to ourselves. So Jeff, tell us a little bit about how you got involved in this field.
Yeah, so I'll start by going back to the college years. I went to college at the University of Nevada, and I stopped it at University of Nevada. So anyone listening in Nevada is going to be upset about that if you went to UNLV. Sorry. But I went there and got a master's degree in biotechnology. And after college was 2009, so not the greatest time to find jobs. We moved down to Texas for a job. And that was my first exposure to the world of animal research. So went 5 years in school, never heard a single thing about the use of animals in research, which is kind of mind-blowing. And worked there for a few years with lots of different animal models. I was really just fascinated by the whole world of lab animal medicine, how there were veterinarians overseeing the animals and their health and welfare, how there were just so much support and administrative staff and researchers and physicians and scientists involved. And so after those 3 years, my wife joined the military and we moved to Virginia. So I got a new job in Richmond, Virginia as a biosafety officer. Not a whole lot of animal involvement in that job, a little bit, but I wanted to get back into the animal world. And so after a few years there, an opportunity opened up on the more east coast of Virginia, where I cook administrator of sorts. So IACUC being the Institutional Animal Care and Use Committee. We'll talk more about that later in the show. Responsible for kind of overseeing all the protocols that go on. And I got to interact daily with veterinarians, the researchers, and it was where I wanted to be. But then I ended up now, I'm in my second year of veterinary school. So after a few years of doing that job, I decided, I want to go to veterinary school, be a lab animal veterinarian, and just super passionate about the field and the importance of the research and educating the public on how we need it and all of that. So that's where I'm at.
A little bit about myself. So I grew up in Connecticut, always loved animals, knew I wanted to work with them, didn't know in what capacity, went to University of Connecticut, go Huskies, and I majored in animal science. And I remember one day my dad sat me down and he was like, Danielle, I don't understand what animal science is going to give you. How are you going to have a career when you graduate? And I was like, Dad, don't worry about it. I'll figure it out. I got this. I had no clue what I was doing. But I remember junior year, I took a class called Lab Animal Science, taught by Dr. Robert Milvey, my favorite professor. And he just opened up this whole world to lab animal research that I had no idea about previously. For this class, we each had a lab rat that we got to work with. And at the end of the course, we got to adopt them. So I had this awesome rat that, we kind of cared for and got to learn with. And then I got to adopt him. His name was Nacho. And he lived a very happy life. Yeah. And it just kind of got me involved in this field. And as soon as I graduated, I worked as an animal care technician in a lab, moved around to North Carolina and then to Virginia. I've worked as a vet tech. I've managed an animal facility. And now, like you mentioned, Jeff, I'm on the sort of administrative side and I help coordinate for the IACUC, which, as he said, was the Institutional Animal Care and Use Committee. So I'm still involved in the animal research side of things, but more on the compliance side, which fits in with my passion for making sure that these animals are cared for. And that's how Jeff and we crossed paths because he was doing the IACUC side and I was managing the facility. And we worked really well together. And here we are trying to let everybody know about what we do in this field.
Yeah. And just real quick, too, you say you manage a facility. What goes into that? So, you have, because it's not just something you can anybody can go do, right? There's certifications involved and things like that as well.
Yes, there are multiple levels of certifications. So when you start out as an animal caretaker, you can just get the assistant lab animal technician certification. There's a lab animal technician, lab animal technologist, and certified manager of animal resources. So you kind of work your way up, taking these exams, ensuring that you have knowledge and, you're invested in this career. And those help you kind of climb the ladder, if you will, to get to the top.
And all those exams are kind of to ensure that you understand the different regulations and the different species involved and how to properly care for these animals that are in the labs.
Yep.
That are in their so-called cages, right?
Yes, cages. And that's a good point you make, because I decided I think we should try to change the narrative to call them more of enclosures, because when I think of the word cage, I'm using air quotes over here, you sort of picture like a metal box and it's just barren and awful.
Like there's water dripping in the back of it and it's cold and there's a draft going through.
Yeah, we are not housing animals in these conditions whatsoever. So just scrap that image out of your brain and think of them. So I'm going to use the word enclosure. Some of the animals are even in their cages, again, are called suites because they have multiple levels. There's ladders for animals that want to climb. There's nests and various bedding substrates that they can play in and dig in. They have little houses. They have different enrichment every week, different treats. Larger animals get to interact with the caretakers more because they prefer that. So you can kind of hold them, hug them, scratch them, give them, love and attention one-on-one time. So these animals are
they're housed together as well, right? So that they can interact with each other. And that's a big thing. So there's lots of, I guess the point here I wanted to make with bringing that up was just there's lots of different regulations, and we will talk about some of the regulations and make that as exciting as we possibly can. I know regulations people just shut their minds off when they hear that word. It's not a very super exciting topic. We'll try to make it very basic, just hit the surface of it. Again, just to let you guys know that these animals aren't just being taken from people's homes or shelters or off the street or whatnot for research. So thanks for that introduction about yourself. And then the next thing I just kind of want to touch on real quick before we get in and start throwing out all these different words and terms are the differences between animal testing and animal research. Because I know we both kind of have our interpretation. I think our interpretations align, but a lot of media, if you read on any article or blog post or whatnot online, it seems that they only talk about animal testing when to me, it's animal research. And there's a big difference between the two. Mm-hmm. So animal testing is more when the animals are needed for testing safety and efficacy of different drugs or products or medical devices to ensure that they're safe before you give them or put them into a human or an animal. And so we just have to make sure there's a process there enforced by the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration. The animal research side is more the study of organisms, the study of biology, understanding how our bodies work, how our minds work, how animals' physiology works, and then study of infectious diseases. The world of animal research is, we could sit here and describe forever, but basically coming up with new medical advancements for humans, for pets. And so those are that's my main interpretation of the two.
Yeah, people might not even really process the amount of animal research that goes into even bringing your pet to the vet for if you need to have a rabies vaccine, or if you put Frontline on your dog to make sure they don't have fleas and ticks. Like, these products, there had to be research that went into them to make sure they're safe for your pet, make sure that they do what they're supposed to do. So there's so many levels of animal research, all the way up to curing cancer, which hopefully one day there's an easy cure across the board for that. But until we get to that point, animal use for research is going to be necessary.
We'll stick with the Frontline example. We don't want to just have someone develop it in a lab and be like, all right, this is good. Let's mass produce it and give it to all the pets. And we haven't tested it. It has to be tested somehow. And we have to make sure that it's safe. We have to make sure it's safe for us. We have to make sure it's safe for our pets and all animals and humans. So, and as you started to touch on, there's no end to the use of animal research currently. We have to use them. We don't even, people talk about the organs on a chip and all the different in vitro and computer modeling, which is all super great. I think every scientist, every physician, every person involved in the field of lab animal research would gladly throw in the towel and move on to another career field if there was 100% effective replacement of animals for research. If you could do it, but at this point in time, we're just not there.
I think that's a good segue into kind of discussing what the IACUC oversees, because we can talk about the institutional animal care and use committees at every institution that uses animals with funded research. We ensure that research is not pointlessly being repeated. It has to be a new study, a refinement in a study. If we want to keep talking about flea and tick treatments, it's not going to be approved because that work is already established. So moving forward, new cancer treatments. Okay, we've treated this kind of cancer. Let's see if the same treatment works on a different kind of cancer. It has to be something new. And that's why there's a whole committee that has a minimum of essentially 5 people. Some committees can have 3. We don't need to get into the details between the 2. But you're always
let's not put everyone to sleep too quick.
You're always going to have a vet on that committee. You're always going to have scientists. There should be community members, people who are not affiliated with the institution, who can just have an outsider perspective to make sure that the research,
Right. And they also don't have a science background. Sorry. They also don't have a science background either, right? So they're truly just an outsider from the community coming in to review protocols and just put in their 2 cents, if you will, for each protocol to question why it's necessary in a way.
Yep. There's a statistician on committees to make sure that the number of animals that are being requested makes sense. Can you get scientifically or statistically significant data with less animals? All these aspects are reviewed before a protocol is approved, and animal work cannot start until they have an approved protocol. So there are checks and balances in place so that people can't just come up with an idea, run into the lab, order 100 animals, and then try something.
Right, because even if they did try that, you, previously animal facility manager, would just be shutting that down anyways. It's not even like they can go online and order their own animals. That's all through a different system. They can't put in an order for animals until the people ordering them see that there's an approval.
Yes.
And just back to what you're saying about statisticians and refinement and all that, there's actually in this field a thing called the 3 R's: refinement, replacement, and reduction. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's been about a year. So
you're good.
And so all of those things are aimed at how can you replace the animal model? How can you reduce the animal numbers? And how can you refine your techniques to eliminate or reduce pain or distress that these animals may undergo? So all of those these IACUC meetings are 3 hours long. And those 3 hours may be 2 protocols. So they really get down into the nitty gritty and to the protocol design,
the
pain control.
They can also request modifications to the protocol. So just because it went and was discussed in front of a committee, it's not guaranteed to get approval. They could come back and say, you need to reduce your number of animals. You need to justify why you want to use this pain medicine instead of this pain medicine, which could work better. And a lot of times the researcher will come back and say, oh, great idea. I'm going to use that one instead. It's a lot of collaboration between the vets, the researchers, the caretakers, the staff in the animal facility, the research technicians who work for the researchers. It's all to create a better research model that's humane and will give good results. Because again, if you're not even housing these animals or treating them with the care and respect that they deserve, you're not going to get good data. And that's a double negative. So it just doesn't behoove anyone to do that.
Yeah. Behoove. That's good. And I mean, we've both seen that firsthand without going into details about protocols that it was early on in a scientific, research protocol, and it wasn't working as they intended as far as surgeries and pain control went, and they weren't getting the data that they needed. But, with the input of veterinarians and vet techs to modify different techniques they would do either pre-surgery, post-surgery, during the surgery, pain control, they were able to then refine that technique to where the animals are now much better off, and they end up getting much better data that then leads to furthering their research, hopefully getting closer to getting into humans and curing cancer, because that's what that protocol was trying to find a new cure for breast cancer, or a cure for breast cancer.
And that also lends itself to the point I want to make about post-approval monitoring. So just because this iCook has approved a protocol and people are starting their research project, it's part of my job currently to perform these post-approval monitoring. So I just will pick a protocol, let the researcher know I'm going to show up next time they do a procedure, and I just observe and I just make sure everything is in line with what is approved by the committee, what's in the protocol. If they're running into issues, I can say, hey, let's sit down with the vet. Let's work through this. Let's get an amendment on file to say you want to change this procedure. So just because they've gotten approval, there's still oversight for the lifespan of that protocol.
Right. They don't just get it run amok. And they have to check in every year, right? They have to give an annual report to the iCook once a year, and that has to be reviewed. And then every 3 years, they need to completely rewrite their protocol and resubmit it and go through the whole approval process all over again. So these protocols aren't being approved indefinitely. Without any oversight.
Continue to oversight.
Yeah. And the oversight is, super strict, right? If you catch them giving an injection through the wrong route, like if they're giving it under the skin instead of into the muscle, it's something like, well, you got to write that up.
Yeah,
but it's very collaborative. You try to do it in a way that's collaborative and not policing. And I think that sets up a good environment to ensure the health and welfare of the animals if everyone's willing to work together. And the scientists, once they're trained on the importance of the health of their animals and how it affects their data, they're totally on board with the ensuring, that they do everything that they can to minimize or eliminate pain and distress. And they're super well taken care of.
Everyone in this field has a vested interest in the care of these animals. And I just think people need to kind of be made aware, because you just see the other side where people say that we're just leaving these animals in cages and they're just ignored until someone wants to poke them with a needle and do science. It's just such a overplayed, incorrect narrative.
Right. Yeah. And I've had those conversations, and it's unfortunate. A lot of the vet techs in this field came from small animal clinics or large animal or mixed animal clinics where they were working with people's pet cats or dogs or horses. And now they just wanted to change. And here they are in lab animal, and they find themselves unable to talk about what they do with other people because everyone gives them this look that there's some cruel, inhumane person because they're involved in the field of animal research. I know personally for me, if I'm out somewhere and someone asks me what I do, I'm real hesitant to tell them because I know it's going to be a long conversation 99% of the time, unless they're involved in the field, then they understand. Either they're going to be opposed to it, and I'm going to have to try to convince you otherwise, maybe re-educate you on some of the facts that you might think are facts, or just have to explain what it is. It's never a quick hey, I'm Jeff. Yeah, I do lab animal research. See you later.
Lab animal research. Oh, you do animal testing?
Right. Yeah. Which goes back to the animal testing. I've had people just say, oh, you're testing makeup on animals. That's completely different too. So I'm sure you've had those conversations or just questioned whether or not you even want to tell people what you're doing. Because even in school, there's all these tracks that we can do, right? In veterinary school. So you could do small animal track. You can do food animal. Even when people ask me at school, sometimes I'm tempted just to say I'm doing small animal, or my goal out of school is to do small animal medicine, because again, it's just that long conversation, even with veterinary students. That's why I think, that's why a podcast like this is so important. And hopefully by the end of these episodes that we're going to do for this podcast series, people will at least have this different idea in their mind about what animal research is, and not forcing anyone to support it. But hopefully by what you hear on this podcast, you'll at least think differently and understand it and realize that, it's not everything that you've heard.
For future episodes of this podcast, we have some pretty interesting guest people that we're going to be interviewing. Do you want to kind of go into who you're hoping to interview on this?
I don't want to give away too much information, give away all the exciting details for upcoming episodes. But we do have lab animal veterinarians coming on. We have at least one or two researchers that are going to be coming on just to talk about their particular research and how they've made advancements, medical advancements, personally using their own research involving animals. And then we're also going to bring on some individuals from prominent organizations in the field that go out of their way to be supportive of animal research and promote animal research and try to get the word out there, like this podcast is doing. And there's a lot of websites out there that do promote animal research. They're just not super easy to come by, but that is starting to change. And hopefully in the years to come, we won't even need websites and podcasts and all this to tell people how important it is, because it'll just be the new norm, if you will. Can I say the norm? It'll be the new norm. And people will just understand that it's totally different than everything they may have thought, and that it's great and 100% necessary, and the animals are well taken care of. So yeah, there'll be exciting guests coming up. And if Danielle and I haven't entertained you enough, then people coming up on the show will definitely be very entertaining and something that you'll want to listen to.
And we briefly touched on the oversight of the IACUC for each institution, but there's other oversight agencies that are outside of the institution that have regulations in place that we have to follow, such as USDA.
Yeah, the United States Department of Agriculture, just to make it clear.
Right. The USDA is, they enforce the Animal Welfare Act. They pop in and do surprise inspections to make sure, again, everything's being followed on the protocol.
It's always a fun day, right? When you're at your computer and knock on your door and it's the USDA.
Just stop what you're doing, yeah.
And that's literally how much of a surprise it is. You don't even get a phone call from the parking lot. It's they're walking in your office.
Yeah. And you have to file reports with them annually to kind of go over the work that's happened in your facility. There is another agency, AALAC, AAALAC.
Yep, a lot of A's.
Assessment and Accreditation for Lab Animal Care. This is a voluntary accreditation that institutes want to obtain because it's really going above and beyond the required regulations. And it's saying that you do everything with more precautions and more stipulations in place to make sure that these animals are cared for. And like I said, it's all voluntary. It's a peer review system. And if you have this accreditation, it helps your institute get more grants, which gets you more funding, which gets more equipment that's newer and better, and everything just continues to kind of snowball into this ever-improving research program.
Yeah, and it's not easy to get. I mean, they scrutinize and critique every aspect of your protocol. I think you have to submit this thing called a program description where you describe everything you could think of. I mean, they're like hundreds of pages long. Yeah, I mean, you're describing square footage, you're describing of the facility, then you're describing square footage or square inches of cages. Yep. Because there's that other book, the guide, as we refer to it as, but it's the guide for the care and use of laboratory animals, which is something that when AALAC comes in, they're going to make sure you're meeting at least all of those requirements, which are just super specific. I mean, down to how many air changes per hour you have in your room and how many square inches of caging floor space you have to socially house animals. Filtered water, cage washing, everything. But it's definitely worth it. And all the institutions that are doing research, I mean, if you don't have that AALAC accreditation, you're kind of behind the game a little bit. And and everyone, they realize the importance of having it because the list of accredited institutions are published online and you don't want to be the one left off that list.
It's the gold standard.
Indeed. And then there's also the Public Health Service policy or the PHS policy. And so there's a lot of acronyms coming at you in this podcast. And that's enforced, here's more, by the National Institutes of Health, NIH, their Office of Laboratory Animal Welfare. And they also require documents to be submitted every 4 years to approve your facility. And they'll come out occasionally too and inspect your facility. And they're just completely random. You never know when they're going to come. I mean, they may let you know before they actually show up, but it's not on any sort of set schedule. So what do we have now? We have the USDA enforcing the Animal Welfare Act, which is actually a law, and they do their inspections and they publish those online, right, for people to see if they want to. You go to their website and look it all up. And then we have PHS policy enforced by the NIH. And then we have the AALAC, voluntary accreditation. So between those agencies and then all the different standards and guides out there, there's lots of oversight covering all the species of animals. I mean, even the fish are covered, even the zebrafish. So lots of oversight, definitely not just being taken or ordered online to someone's basement and being used there in some sort of dark, damp environment. I mean, the facilities are pristine, right? You can't have a chip on the wall inside, a paint chip on the wall inside one of these facilities. So it's just crazy. And it's just mind boggling, the backlash that the field gets. And hopefully we can start to change that.
I think we also just kind of wanted to touch on, if you work in this field and you're listening to this podcast, we certainly appreciate all the work that you do for these animals.
Yeah, 100%.
Everyone I've met and worked with is so compassionate for the animals. Everyone's got new ideas. There's conferences that happen every year where people can kind of come up with an idea and talk about it, get presentations. And, I saw this great lecture on how to add new enrichment to a rabbit enclosure. And let's try this at our facility. And, it's very collaborative in the whole industry. Like I said, these conferences, there's trainings, continuing education opportunities. And if you partake in any of those, we applaud you. We appreciate you. And make sure that you guys give us a shout out on Twitter or email so you can be in the running for these Amazon gift cards, which I'm kind of jealous, and I wish I wasn't co-host so that I could be involved and maybe win
Don't
one.
go making a fake account just so you can try to win.
I promise.
I mean, I would never know, but you'll know, and that's all that matters.
Until I gave you my address to have you ship the gift card, that would give me away.
True. You could do a P.O. box. I'll ship to P.O. boxes.
Okay. So just, comment, ask us questions if something was unclear, because I'm sure we were confusing on some topics. Just say, hey, can you kind of describe this again? I want to know more about this. And, we can reply on Twitter. We can talk about it in our next podcast.
Yep.
If you have questions, we can announce once we have a better idea of who will be on the show exactly. We can kind of let everybody know, and they can have questions to write in.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And going back to if you're in this field, thank you. You're doing a great job. And it's just, don't be scared of talking about what you do. I think you just need to make sure you communicate it appropriately and effectively. The more we start talking about it, that's one of the issues. We've been burying our heads in the sand for so long. We need to take our heads out of the sand. We need to start talking about it. The more transparent we are, the less secretive the field looks like, the more people are going to question that something's not right, or, that it's cruel and inhumane. If we're completely open about what we do and let everyone know how great it all really is, it's just going to help. So let people know, tell them what you do. Even if it does take a minute, it's worth re-educating somebody a little bit about what the truths really are around this field.
Well, I hope we've entertained you a little bit, and hopefully you come back and want to listen to more podcasts and get more information about this really unique and interesting field.
Yeah, and then we've set our Twitter handle and all that, right? We did all that. So we're good.
Yeah, Twitter handle is @TheLabRatChat.
Yep.
There's another Twitter account that's just @LabRatChat, and it's not affiliated with us, and it says it's suspended. So make sure you have the word "the" in there.
Right, we don't know.
The Lab Rat.
We don't know them.
We don't know why they're suspended.
Remember the at the beginning. And then again, email labratchat@gmail.com. And that's it for this episode. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll be back soon with another episode with an exciting guest. So stay tuned.